Jumpin' In on Manx Radio.
With Howard and Chris Kane.
Hello.
Good evening.
And welcome. It's that time again, would you believe, 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, the best in modern and contemporary jazz in Jumpin' In, and we're going a bit poppy.
Yes, welcome to this week's Jumpin' In, and with only 14 sleeps until the big day, we've decided to go pop, as H said. Now, before you go off in a huff or whatever the other type of vehicle you might have around, remember that jazz was always based on popular music and has used popular songs and show tunes and blues many, many times in the past, and we've featured plenty of examples on the show. Herbie Hancock's New Standards, for example, Gordon Beck's Jazz Goes Pop, the Rolling Stones Project, Ben Crosland's Ray Davies Songbook, and many, many more. So settle down as we pop a few new ones your way. So what's been off the chart for you this week, H?
Well, we have a bit of Oasis, we might have some Blondie, we could even have some country, we'll definitely have a bit of Paul Simon.
Country, that was never mentioned. And from me, brothers, Finns, and to kick off, a Harrison, but not George. What happens now? No, that's the name of the track. What happens now? Fantastic. Taken from drummer Gavin Harrison's album Cheating the Polygraph. That was What Happens Now. And Harrison, one of the pop publications, actually said Porcupine Tree, his band, was possibly one of the best bands that you never heard of. He's a highly respected pop, rock and session drummer. He grew up with the sound of jazz around the house because his father was one of the many trumpeters in the great Sid Phillips band. There's a name to conjure with. A band who, incidentally, in its time featured Tommy Whittle, Kenny Ball and George Shearing, can you believe? He played mainly with the pop and prog group Porcupine Tree for 20-odd years, still plays with them, and with King Crimson. And he and the bass player Lawrence Cottle worked on the arrangements for 5 years before the album actually was recorded. And the flute soloist was the ubiquitous Gareth Loughrane, whose fantastic big band we caught recently at London Jazz Festival, and we'll be featuring an interview sometime in the future.
Most certainly did. Wonderful stuff, and yet another example, were it needed, of great players you've never heard of. Maybe not because they've been, or maybe because they're not playing predominantly in the jazz genre. Who knows? I'll pretty much guarantee you'll have heard of one or both of these bands. If I say Blondie, I think you'll probably have heard of the band, even though you might not be a fan, jazz or otherwise. I always quite like Blondie, if I'm honest. But yes, the Bad Plus, also known, still going. They've changed their pianist, of course. Ethan Iverson left some years back to pursue other careers, as it were, mostly solo. I think he's doing quite a lot of solo projects these days, and he's quite big online. Anyway, they're very keen on doing covers, and Blondie, a cover of Blondie, was on their very first album, These Are the Vistas. Heart of Glass. Ah, great ending. Yes, Dave King on the drums there, Reed Anderson bass, Ethan Iverson at the piano, collectively known as the Bad Plus, albeit I think it's Orrin Evans is now on the piano stool as Ethan has left. Their first album, I think it was their first album officially out anyway, These Are the Vistas, 2003 on Sony, and you might have recognised their take on Blondie's Heart of Glass.
I know how much you enjoyed that album, and it's almost identical to the original, isn't it? Now, next from me, some brothers. The first of my brothers, the Hazelrigg Brothers. Pianist George and brother Jeff on bass have a pretty broad interest in music, like I should say we do, and they feature on many recordings, playing classical, early music, as well as jazz. And their album, Songs We Like, is just that, ranging from Bartok to Hendrix via Jethro Tull and early music, and this track, Steely Dan's King of the World. The Hazelrigg Brothers there with Steely Dan's King of the World. I know that was a group I always liked. Anyway, and pretty jazzy, taken from the Dan's Countdown to Ecstasy album. They were always jazz influenced, and their originals often featured jazz soloists like the Brecker Brothers, Phil Woods, Wayne Shorter, and many others, but this version doesn't disappoint either. The recording quality is immaculate, which is perhaps not surprising, as the brothers' day job is running Hazelrigg Industries that makes high-end studio equipment in New Jersey. Very nice.
Very nice, yeah. I'll have some of their speakers as well, if that's the case. You're listening to Jumping In. Chris and H with you, a pop jazz special. Pop jazz special, yes.
Jazz pop special.
Yes, it's pop, Grandad, but not as you know it. Covers, jazz covers of some pop standards you may or may not know from various artists. This one, I suppose, it's crossover. It's country, I suppose. It's country, Jim, but not as we know it, because it certainly came into the pop category as well. But if I say it was by Dolly Parton, well, you know, I must admit, who doesn't like Dolly Parton, and who doesn't like a bit of Jolene? Great fun, I must admit. Country for Old Men is the album. John Schofield, of course, long flirted with the sounds of country music, hammer-ons, double stops, marked his style as much as the modal riffs one would expect from a jazz player, I guess, and he says he's always rather fancied the idea. Country for Old Men, a sample of country music old and new from Texas, California, Tennessee, Kentucky and Ontario. John said, I wanted to play these songs because I've always liked country music from afar. I knew if we picked the right songs, we could turn them into jazz.
And he's not wrong there.
Not wrong there. John on guitar. He plays ukulele on this album as well. I don't know which track that is off the top of my head. Larry Golding's unusually on piano there, normally a Hammond organ.
He's normally a Hammond,
piano man. Steve Swallow bass, of course, long-time associate Bill Stewart at the drums.
And again, interestingly, all identifiable. They got very distinct styles, particularly Sco, I think. Next, more jazz siblings from me, Julian and Roman Wasserfer. Trumpeter and keyboardist respectively. They made their debut back in 2006 as part of the Act record label's Young German Jazz series when Julian was just 17 and his brother 21, with a tribute to Chet Baker. For their 2011 album Gravity, they recruited a top-line rhythm section, Lars Danielsson on the bass and drummer Wolfgang Hafner, and here they give a jazz workout to a Sting favourite. Englishman in New York, of course, from the Wasserfuhr brothers. And perhaps Sting had been one of the most jazz-influenced pop artists in any case, as is the original version of the band featured Kenny Kirkland on piano and Branford Marsalis on sax. Still great to hear a fully instrumental version, and I think the brothers do it justice.
Most certainly do. Very haunting. I like the end of that one. And anything again on ACT and that Young German Jazz series had some wonderful stuff. Michael Volney, of course, coming to prominence through that series on ACT a few years ago with M. I remember hearing this one it's funny how things stick in your mind. We were in Fnac in Paris, and I think possibly this time of the year, around about Christmas. And yes, I managed to persuade the other half to allow me a half an hour in Fnac in Paris. And I was wandering through the jazz section. I thought, I'm sure I recognise this tune. I'm sure I do. Do you?
Hi, this is Craig Taborn, and you're listening to Jumpin' In with H and Chris on Manx Radio.
The problem is all inside your head, he said to me. The answer is easy if you take it logically. I'd like to help you in your struggle to be free. There must be 50 ways to leave your lover. He said it's really not my habit to intrude, and furthermore, I hope my meaning won't be lost or misconstrued. I'll repeat myself at the risk of being crude. There must be 50 ways to leave your lover. 50 ways to leave your lover. You just slip out the back, Jack. Make a new plan, Stan. You don't need to be coy, Roy. You just to listen to me. Hop on the bus, Gus. You don't need to discuss much. Drop off a Keeley and get yourself free. He said it grieves me so to see you in such pain, and I wish there was something I could do to make you smile again. I said I appreciate that, and would you please explain about the 50 ways? He said, why don't we both just sleep on it tonight? And I believe that in the morning you'll begin to see the light. And then he kissed me and I realized he probably was right. There must be 50 ways to leave your lover. 50 ways to leave your lover. You just slip out the back, Jack. Make a new plan, Stan. You don't need to be coy, Roy. You just to listen to me. Hop on the bus, Gus. You don't need to discuss much. Drop off a Keeley and get yourself free. Slip out the back, Jack. Make a new plan, Stan. You don't need to be coy, Roy. You just to listen to me. Hop on the bus, Gus. You don't need to discuss much. And drop off a Keeley and get yourself free. You get yourself free. We get yourself free. You get yourself free.
Oh, beautiful. Love that version of Paul Simon's 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. Sidsel Endresen on the, and again, unique voice on vocals. Booger Vesseltoft at the piano. Really lovely, that one. And before that, yes, you might have recognised Wonderwall. That was the one I heard in Fnac in Paris, as interpreted by Brad Meldau with his trio, Larry Grenadier bass, Jeff Ballard at the drums, live at the Village Vanguard.
Well, that about wraps up this pop special, but we just time to fit in a track from Finnish all-star combo Imeliki Quartet, taken from the group's second album, recorded in 2019, just a mere 13 years after the first. Land of Real Men is a fascinating project, as you might well expect from Werner Pajola on trumpet, Tuomo Pratila on piano, Antti Luotonen on bass, and Olivia Lorvori on the drums. Here's Laurie Anderson's Oh Superman.
Good track.
Normal Reservists will be resumed next week.
Take care.
Pop off now.